Okay guys, welcome back to episode 3 of our Asteroids game. Today we're going to be working on adding the shooting mechanism into the game. So in the previous episode we worked on getting our player to actually move around our scene. Today we're going to be working on allowing our player to actually shoot objects in the game. We're not going to add in the objects yet, but we're just going to work on the actual shooting of the game. So we're going to try and get that implemented and working today. So let's jump into here so we can see what's on the list to do today. So it was quite a big list today. Hopefully it will go, let's get rid of that, hopefully it will go smooth and everything will work. Shouldn't take too long, maybe about 20-25 minutes as usual. So the first thing we have to do is we need to go ahead and create our new sprite, and then we'll shape it and make it the size we want. And then we'll do all sorts of things to it, and then after that we will start by coding in the actual shooting implementation part of it. So that's not going to take too long. It's also not that difficult. I think it's just a few lines of code. But yeah, let's jump straight into it and see if we can get it going. So I think this is the game. Okay, so this is the game. This is what we had. Well, let's go ahead and play the game and see what we've done in the previous episode. So all we have here is our little player. You can move around the scene using the up arrow and the W key, I think it is. You can also rotate the player with the A and D keys, and also with the left and right arrows. And the S and down arrows, or the down arrow and the S key, doesn't really do anything because in this game you can't move backwards. All you have to do is rotate the player to face in the direction you want and then go from there. But yeah, that's all we did in, not yesterday's episode, the previous episode. But today, let's go and start this episode. So, what we want to do is we first want to create a new sprite. We're going to create a square sprite, and then we're going to set the scale to 0.075 and on the x-axis and the y-axis as well. So let us go, and where are we? So we're in our scene, click on that, zoom out, cool. So now let's go and create a new 2D object, sprite and a square. So that's going to set our square to like a default 1 by 1 by 1 square. We're going to go and reset that so it pops it into the middle. You don't really need to do that, but we're going to do that. And then we'll change the scale to, what was it, 0.075. on the X and the Y, I think it is 0.075, so that's gonna make it a very, very small little square. So that's what that's gonna look like. So we're just gonna, whenever we press what's it called, I think we're gonna be using the either the space bar or the left mouse click. I think we'll see when we start implementing it. But whenever you press one of two of those, you're just going to shoot out like multiple bullets, and this is basically going to be the bullet. So now we need to actually create a prefab out of this, but I can see that my layout here is confused. So just go and switch back to our save layout. That looks more familiar. So we need to create a prefab. So we have got a prefab folder for this. But let's see if we need to change anything on this. So we've changed our scale. We're going to add in a rigid body and a box collider to that, and then we'll go ahead and change the gravity and the drag to equal to 0. So click on the square, add a rigid body 2D. We'll change the drags already equal to 0, and we will set the gravity to 0 actually, to 0, and then also the angular drag to 0. We'll save that for now. We might change that later, just because bullets don't really fly forever. Where else we're going this way. So we've done the drag and gravity, and we also need to add in a box collider so they can collide with things. So click on the square again. Let's add in a box collider 2D, because obviously it's a 2D game. We'll just zoom into that and see if the collider is around a box, which it is. So we can go ahead and save that. So that is our bullet. Let's see if there's anything else we need to add. Okay, so we also need to freeze the rotation, and then we can create a prefab out of that. So first of all, let's go ahead and rename this to bullet. Instead of being square, it's going to be a bullet, and then we also need to freeze the rotation. So we're going to do that under constraint on our rigid body. We are going to freeze the rotation on the Z axis over there. So that is not going to rotate, it's just going to shoot out straight, which is what we want. So we'll leave that like that. And now that I think the bullet is complete, we can go ahead and drag that into our prefabs folder, which is there. So that will automatically create a prefab out of this one, but now we don't really need this in here, so we'll go ahead and delete it. So where's delete? There it is. But we still have a bullet over here. So now in the game, whenever we press the spacebar or that we click on the mouse button, we can go ahead and instantiate that. So that is what we want. So let's go see what's next. So we've created our prefab, or our bullet. We've created a prefab out of our bullet, so that whatever we do to the one bullet is going to do to all of them. And now what we want to do is we want to go and create a bullet script and attach that onto the prefab. So let us go and do that. So what do we want to do? No, we don't. So let's create a scripts folder here. So we'll create a new folder and call this scripts. Can't spell. Cool, so we can drag in our player script into there, and then in here we will create a new C# script and we'll call this bullet when it lets us. So we'll change the name of this to bullet, and we are going to, well, we're already on our bullet prefab here, so we can go ahead and attach the script onto this straight away. So to do that, you could just simply drag it straight on, or you could do what I'm going to do and type in bullet over there, and so that's going to attach the bullet script onto this bullet. So whenever we instantiate a new bullet into the game, it will always have all of these components on it. So now we need to go and start getting references to our rigid body and then adding force to it, and then setting like a lifetime to the bullet, because obviously we don't want the bullet to to just be in the scene all the time. When it gets off the screen after a few seconds, we want to go ahead and destroy it, otherwise our game will get extremely large and full of bullets that are nowhere to be seen on the scene. So let's go do that. So we want to go and get some references to our to our components. So let us go and click on our bullet and we'll open that up. So when that opens, we need to get a reference to our rigid body, and then we also need to add in a few more things. So I will bring this over here, make that full screen, swap these. Okay, so here we can go ahead and delete our start and update, I think it was, and then in here we need to get a reference to our rigid body. So we will create a public, I think it's rigid body 2D, and we'll simply just call this rigid body, so like that. So if we save that, we can now pop back into our Unity here, and if we click on our bullet, when this loads, we should have a reference to drag and drop our bullet, our rigid body in our bullet class on our bullet. So I'll show you here. If we click on and expand our bullet script, you can see there's this reference. So now we can go and drag our 2D or our rigid body 2D into there. So now whenever we reference this in our just in the code somewhere, it is going to go and use this rigid body here that we just dragged in. So that's what we want. So what's next on the list? So we've got our rigid body reference. So now we can go and add some force to our rigid body, and then we can also add some lifetime to the bullet. Cool. So let's go and add some force to it. So to do this, we want to go ahead and create a new method here, and we will call this one, it needs to be public because we are going to access this from another script. I think it's our player script. But in here we're going to call this public void project. So whenever we click on, whenever we press the spacebar or we click our mouse button, we're going to call this project method, and this is going to obviously add some force to the bullet. So in here we want to go and say underscore rigid body, so referencing this rigid body here that we just created. So we'll go ahead and add some force to that, but before we do that we need to add some speed to it. So we need to make a speed float variable here. So let's say public, or we could probably make this private. This will be a float. Private float speed is equal to about, let's try 500 for now. We'll see how fast that is. So all we want to do is we want to, first of all, we need to we need to add a parameter into here, because whenever we call this project method we also need to give it a direction to add the force to. So in our project method, as a parameter we want to add in a, I think it's a vector 3 direction, like that. And then in here all we want to go and say is add force and then the direction times our speed. So that is going to add force in the correct direction, which means whenever we press the spacebar or we press the mouse button, it's going to shoot off a bullet in the direction that the player is facing. So that's fine, we can go ahead and save that. What's next? Something about lifetime. So we need to also add in a lifetime to the bullet. So we'll create another private. This is going to be a float as well. Private float max lifetime. We'll call it that. You can call it anything. We'll let that equal to about 10. So the maximum lifetime of a bullet in the game is 10 seconds. And that is if it doesn't collide with anything. Obviously if it collides with an asteroid later down when we implement that, it is going to go and get destroyed. So what we want to do is, after we've added the force, we want to go and destroy the bullet. So let's say this dot game object, so destroy anything that this script is attached to, and then we'll also add in a delay, which is our max lifetime like that. So after our 10 seconds it will destroy the bullet if it hasn't collided with anything. So that's what we want. Therefore the bullet won't be in the scene the whole time, and the game won't just get bigger and bigger because all of these game objects like get instantiated into the scene, because obviously they'll be destroyed over time. So we can go and save that. And then I think that's pretty much it for the bullet class, so we can delete these because we don't really use them. So we'll save that, and then we will jump back into here. We'll let that load and see if we get any errors in our console. Hopefully we don't, because then we can move on to the next one. Cool, so we have no errors, so let's go and see what's next on the list. Okay, so now we need to instantiate the bullet from our player class. So to do that, we need to create another method, and that is going to be called shoot. So that we're going to do both of these at the same time. We're going to instantiate the bullet, and we're also going to make a shoot method, because obviously the instantiation is going to be done in the shoot method. And then we can go ahead and call that from our update, well not from our update, yeah, from our update we'll add in another if statement, checking to see if we press the spacebar or the arrow, well, not the arrow, the, what's it called, the mouse button, and then if we do press those we will go ahead and shoot the bullet. So in our player class here we want to go and say private void shoot, and then in here we want to go and instantiate it, so we'll say bullet is equal to instantiate this dot bullet okay, so we need to, first of all, we don't have that, so what we need to do is we need to create a reference to our bullet prefab. So we can go and say serialize field private, I can spell it right, private bullet where is it? So bullet, and then it's going to be bullet prefab, so bullet prefab, like that, fab, not fad. So whenever we instantiate it, we're going to use this prefab that will drag and drop into the Unity inspector in a bit. So we can go and say, what is it? This dot bullet prefab, and the next thing on the list is the transform parent. So obviously we want it to instantiate on top of, or technically underneath the player, so it looks like it's coming out of the player. So here we can go and say this dot transform dot position. So that's going to set the position equal to the same position as the player, and then after that we want to go and say this dot transform dot rotation, because obviously we want the same rotation as the parent object, which is our player. So that's fine. So that is now going to instantiate the bullet prefab, or the bullet, using the bullet prefab into the scene. And then what we want to do after that, we want to go and project the bullet. So instead of just having the bullet, where is it? Let's go back to the game. So instead of having the bullet instantiated into the game, which means it will be added into the game and then it will sit on top of the player where the player is. We also want to go and project it so that it moves off into the certain direction that the player is facing into it. So to do that, let's go and say bullet dot project. So this is the method that we created in our bullet class. So this is this. We need to give it a direction, and I think this we'll rather change to 2 vector 2, just because it's a 2D game. So here we'll save that, and then obviously for the position we'll give this position of the player. So this dot transform dot position, like that. So that should be fine. So hopefully that should project our bullet. So we'll go ahead and play the game and just see if we get any errors. We won't be able to project the bullet yet because we haven't added in the what's called the if statement in the update method, if checking if we press the spacebar or the mouse button click. So if you can see, if we press the mouse button or press the spacebar, which I am, nothing really happens, but we don't get any errors, so that's good. So let's go back to our checklist here and see what's next. So same position, we've done that. So we've also projected the bullet, so the only thing left to do is call the shoot in the update method. So simple 1 or 2 lines of code that we need to add into here to simply check if we press the spacebar or if we press the mouse button. So what we want to do is we want to say if what's it called, if input dot get key, I think it's key down, and then open brackets key code dot space, this one. So that's going to check if we press the space button, but we also want it to check if we press the mouse button. So we'll go and say or input dot get mouse button down, and then we need to give it an index, and for the I believe the left mouse button is an index of 0, so we'll check that. You could add 1 or 0 depending on which one you want. You could use left or the right arrow, right mouse button, whichever one you prefer. So if either of those two are pressed, then we simply want to go and call our shoot method, like that. So we'll save that, and then we'll jump back into our game, wait for it to compile and load the scripts, and then we can go ahead and press play, and hopefully now we should be able to shoot bullets into our game, and hopefully they will also be destroyed after a few seconds. So I am going to drag this onto the side, and then for our scene view here, I'm going to hold on. Okay, so we need to go back into our main game here so we can see everything. So now I'm going to zoom out here just so we can see the destroy of the bullets, and I'm going to, well, we're pretty pressing. Okay, so clearly we have an error here, so let's go back and see what that is. Argument exception, object you want to instantiate is null. Where is that? Player line 61 and 40. 40 is there. Okay, so 61 is here. It has our bullet prefab. Okay, so we need to drag in our bullet prefab because we didn't do that before, so it's not really, and it can't instantiate anything that's null. So let us drag in our bullet into there like that, and hopefully now that should all work. And so now we can see if we press, okay, so that it is working, but it's not really, it's like instantiating the bullets but not really doing what we wanted to. So let's see, unassigned reference exception variable. Okay, what line is that? Player 60 and 50, 62 and 40. So let's have a look and see what we're doing wrong here. So player, we got that, yeah. Where are they? We need to go and check. Okay, so here I forgot to do something. So in our project, in our shoot method here on our project, instead of having just our transform.position here, we want to have transform.up. So hopefully that now will allow our bullet to move in the up direction, or wherever the player is facing. So if we play our game, which I think I pressed play, no I didn't, so let's play the game. And hopefully now this should work. So let's, okay, I'm just going to zoom out here so we can, okay, so that still doesn't work. Okay, so let's just see if these disappear over time. So after a few seconds they should be deleted. Do they? Okay, they don't, so we'll fix that probably in a few seconds, or maybe we'll see if we can get the first error fixed. Okay, so let's see. In here we've got instantiate this dot bullet prefab, this dot transform dot position, this transform dot rotation, this dot transform dot up. Yeah, that's fine. What else? And then we have got, no, that's fine. Where am I looking? Okay, so let's go back to our bullet here and see what's wrong here. So if we go this dot speed, hopefully that makes a difference. Our speed is set to 500, our max lifetime is set to 10. Destroy this dot game object, yeah, add force direction times this dot speed. So that is what we want, so we'll save that. We'll jump back into our game and see if this makes any difference when it builds. So if we play the game now, might have to just read that error that we get if we get it, and see what's going on. So we keep getting, okay, so that's clearly not working. So let's see, variable rigid body of of bullet has not been assigned, hasn't it? Okay, so let's tap on our bullet. Okay, so clearly maybe that's why. So we need to drag. I think it's because we changed the name of the rigid body. We added that underscore in to get rid of that error. So hopefully now that we've dragged that in, hopefully, I can only hope that this works perfectly fine, because otherwise I honestly would have no clue on why it's not working. So let's try this again. Great, so that's working fine. So now you can see, so this works perfectly fine. It's what we wanted to happen. But obviously we need to figure out what's it called. We need to figure out how to fix the sorry, I'm getting distracted. We need to figure out how to, whenever we press the like shoot button, the direction of the player changes, which is not really what we want. And also you can see that the bullets are getting stuck on the colliders, which is not what we want either. We want them to disappear off the scene. So let's just see, does this bullet get destroyed after 10 seconds? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it does get destroyed, which is what we want. If we switch back to our game here, you can see that we add in a bullet and then after time it will get deleted, which is what we want. So I think, let's see, make sure I get deleted. So a few seconds have gone past. Okay, great. So that's working how we wanted it to work. Let's see what else on the list. So nothing is on the list anymore. So that's it for this episode. So probably in the next episode we'll try and figure out how to fix the turning of the player whenever we launch a bullet. I will try and figure that out in the next episode, and then if we get that done, we will start working on spawning the asteroids, like randomly from all over this, like outside of the scene, and then after that we will start working on like destroying the player if you collide with an asteroid. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this episode. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on so that you get notified on our next episode coming out in 2 days, I think on Friday. But yeah, that's it for this episode. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.